Here we are again, folks. This is Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. I of late am joined into a seminary called Titus Baptist Seminary. It is at faith.com LaGrange in LaGrange, Georgia, called Titus Baptist Seminary. And you can find it at faith.com LaGrange. It's part of their ministry. And during that time, I have studied the Judges. And today I'm doing a recap on the Judges, and I thought I would go ahead and do it on the YouTube too. And we're going to talk about the first judge in Judges, and these were military reformers, these judges. They all had military action in their minds and in their life. Now, Othniel, the judge, in Judges 1 in verse 12, and I'm going to read it. And Caleb said, "He that smiteth Kiriath-Jearim and taketh it, to him will I give my daughter to wife." And so this man smote Othniel. He smote that place, and he got the daughter. And he was an oppressing nation. He oppressed the Mesopotamia. He oppressed that land for as much as 8 years, and that's as he was judge. And he was a judge of peace, and he was in there 40 whole years. He was the judge, and he was both the nephew and the son-in-law of Caleb. Now what I'm doing here, he captured a strong Canaanite city. What I'm doing here is I'm reviewing for my own personal self the knowledge that I need to be able to continue on and to work in the seminary. I'm going to have to do a discourse on these judges, and therefore I'm reviewing, and you can review with me. You can take down scriptures. You can find, if you have a good study Bible, find a good study Bible. At the first of Judges, you would probably have up at the top on the first page, you would have a list of the judges, and all the way through the judges, and it would show you what they did and who they were and whether they were good or not. Now the second judge was Ehud. That's in chapter 3, 12 through 30. And he oppressed the nation of Moab. The length of oppression was 18 years. And the years of peace were 80 years. After he oppressed this nation, after he made peace in that piece of land for a period of time, they had 80 years of peace. That's amazing. That was good. He assassinated the fat Moabite enemy king named Eglon. And that's quite a story. You can read that story. Once you get into it and find out where the scriptures are, just read through the book of Judges. Take a Bible that you don't mind marking in, which I mark in all of my Bibles. They're all workbooks. And I take a marker and I mark things of interest. And he organized an Israel army which killed 10,000 enemy troops. Wow. That sounds like a lot, but we're going to see some of the other judges killed multiple thousands, not just tens of thousands. And so here he killed 1,000 troops. And then we find that here comes another guy in chapter 3 and 31. His name is Shamgar. Shamgar oppressed the nation of the Philistines, which is Philistia. And the length of oppression is not, we don't know what it is. It is not listed in the amount of years that it took place. And neither is the years of peace. But he killed 600 Philistines with an ox goad. Now this man was something, this Shamgar. He stood out there with an ox goad and killed 600 Philistines in one lick. That is something, isn't it? And then we got this guy named Barak. He comes on the scene in chapter 4. And he comes on chapter 4 and verse 5. He oppressed the Canaanites, the land of Canaan. You say, why would these judges be oppressors of these other people? Well, these other people were trying to take over where they were in Judah. And so the only thing they could do was to either go out to them or fight on their own ground. And they found that the best thing to do is go out there and do it. And so the length of oppression that he had was 20 years. He brought on another time of peace, which was 40 years. So there was 80 and 40 is 120 years of peace right there on the land. So he rose an army of 10,000 at Deborah's encouragement. Now there was this priestess, her name was Deborah, and she helped Barak to defeat the enemy general named Sisera at the base of Mount Tabor. Now that is a well-known story. People have wrote. I don't know if they just like the name Sisera or what, but people have wrote storybooks and books that are true and books that aren't true and all kinds of things about Sisera. But he defeated the army general Sisera at the base of Mount Tabor. Sisera is killed later by Joel while in her tent is sleeping. So Sisera is killed by Joel while he's sleeping. Barak and Deborah sang a dirge of praise over their victory. Now Deborah said to Barak, if I go with you, they're going to say a woman, cut it out, dogs. They're going to say a woman won this war. And because they're going to say that, and they did. They gave the victory to Deborah. And then we got a judge came on. His name was Gideon. Cut it out, dogs. I got two little old mutts. And there's a cat out there with no tail. I guess they never seen such. And he oppressed the nation of Midian. Length of oppression was 7 years. Years of peace were 40. After that, every time they had an oppression, then they had some years of peace. Cut it out, dogs. Cut it out. They don't listen to me. Anyway, years of oppression. And then there was years of good. And we see there were 40 years there. Here, Gideon was commissioned by God to defeat the Midianites. He prepared for this by destroying the family idols. This was a great thing. By the way, every judge or every king or everybody that came on the scene that was a leader in that land that destroyed the idols, God blessed them. Got rid of the idols that were there. And he threw out the fleece twice. Now this is real good. You need to read the story of Gideon, it's chapters 6 through 8. You need to read that, and how Gideon fleeced the Lord, and how he raised an army of 10,000. How he saw this army reduced to 300. Hey, God said, you got too many people. He said, well, Lord, I'm going up against an army of 135,000. And God said, you do what I tell you. So he took 300 and he chased Israel. He caused Israel to sin by making a golden ephod. A golden ephod. He made a golden ephod and caused Israel to sin. That's quite a story there in itself. But you need to read that, where he took the 300. Many of you remember when you were children how you heard the story of Gideon taking the pitchers and going up around the mountains, 300 men with a pitcher and a torch in it. And then when Gideon made the announcement and called about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, all those guys had been drunk down there, that whole group that came in, 135,000 men, and they were in the valley. And when they broke that pitcher and all hollered their triumph like an attack sound, the people down there said, the Israelites are upon us, the Israelites are upon us. It was dark. And they got their swords out and they started slashing and they ended up killing each other. And it took the children of God, the Israelites, it took them several days to gather up all of the what's called booty, all of the stuff, their swords and their shields and their all of their stuff. God gave it to them, just gave it to them. There it was. From 135,000 men was all of the things, the horses, the chariots, all of the stuff that they had brought with them. They brought it over and delivered it, by the way, to Gideon. They didn't know they were doing to do that, but that's what they did. Then we got Tola. Tola oppressed the nation of a length of oppression that we don't know how long it was. And after he was in there, we got 23 years of peace after he was in there. Then a guy named Jared came up, and Jared oppressed the nation. We don't know how long the length of that was, but we do know that after he left, and that was in chapter 10, verses 3 to 5, we do know after he left there were 22 years of peace. He and his 30 sons delivered 30 Israelite cities from oppression. How about that? This man had 30 sons. Wow. But the story of those 30 sons is not so good at the end of it. You'll find that out as you read it and study it. It's really interesting. Look up the judges, look up who they were, and read them. And it's not that many. It's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 judges. And these 12 judges, before we get into kings, we went from judges, they went from judges in Israel to kings in Israel. Okay. Let's look at Japheth in chapter 10, verse 6 through chapter 12, verse 17. He oppressed the nation of Ammon. Length of oppression was 18 years, even though he himself, he developed, though, 6 years of peace afterwards. There was 6 years of peace after they got done doing his deeds there. He was a harlot's son who became a mighty warrior. On the eve of battle, he made a rash vow to God. If victory, he would offer the first thing, that greeted him. His daughter met him, and he sadly performed his vow. He is later provoked into battle with the jealous tribe of Ephraim. Wow. Be careful. Don't vow a vow, because you may have to keep it. And you will have to keep it if you vow it. And it may cost you great. Ibanez. Now Ibanez, chapter 12, 8 through 10. Oppressing the nation. We don't know how long he did oppress the nation of the opposition. And we don't know, there were many of them around and they're not listed. He just pushed out and made sure that the border lines were kept, so that the other nations would not filter in where they weren't supposed to. And then there was Elion, oppressing nations too. The length of oppression, we don't know. It was like 10 years. This is kind of like a picture of a country such as ours, as a matter of fact, the United States. Where I border with Canada, they're our brothers in the Lord. They're our friends. We have been friends with Canada ever since we've been. But on the other end of the scale, down toward Mexico, we have not got a friendly border down there. And so therefore these guys, what they did, everybody that came across their border, they killed them. And that's what they did. And we have a different situation than that today. But this is a likeness of what it was in then. Then there was Abaddon, and he did the same thing. He kept the borders clean for 8, and then there was 8 years of peace that he kept the borders clean so that nobody could come run over the nation. Then there was this guy Samson, chapter 13 through 16. Many thousands of stories have been written about Samson. The oppressing, he oppressed the Philistines. The length of oppression, 40 years he fought against the Philistines and oppressed them, kept them back. For 40 years the Philistines kept trying to come. And he kept them back. And then he was in there for his years of peace after that 40 years was 20 years. So that's 60 years right there. He was to be raised as a Nazarite. He killed a lion en route to his wedding. He killed 30 Philistines to pay off the clothing debt. Upon losing his wife, he burned the wheat fields of the Philistines. He killed 1,000 Philistines with the jawbone of an ass. You remember one of these other guys over here killed several Philistines one night, 600 of them with the jawbone of an ass. Evidently, the jawbone of an ass was a real excellent weapon. It used kind of like a sword, even though it looked kind of like a boomerang. And they used it as a weapon. Wow. You imagine that. He killed 1,000 with the jawbone of an ass. He ripped off an iron gate at Gaza. Wow. He was betrayed into the hands of the Philistines by Delilah. Do you remember when he took that gate? I don't know if you've ever read it or not, but as you study it, you will see where he just picked the gate right up at Gaza, put it on his back, walked up on a hill, and laid it down. And it took an army to bring it back down there and hang it. And one man took it up there. This was, at this time, the strongest one man in the world. And God gave him his strength. He was betrayed in the hands of the Philistine by Delilah. He was shaven, blinded, and absolved. He was supernaturally empowered to destroy many Philistines in their own temple by pulling it down. He himself was killed at this time. What a sad, sad, sad thing to see Samson at the end of his life and throughout the last years of his life, because he allowed a woman to beguile him. He really didn't allow the woman to beguile, in a sense. He willingly took this woman on so that he could have her. The same exact sin that Adam did with Eve, he did. And he said, I'm going to have this woman. God had told him not to go down there, not to take the women of the Philistine. But she appeared to him so beautiful. He got so stirred up emotionally that he said, I've got to have this woman. And this was his downfall. How many men today have fallen through their own lust? Their own lust. Be careful, my friend. Be careful who you are and how you act and what you do, because it has far-reaching consequences. Now, during this period of time of Judges, we're going to look over here in another page in our Wilmington's book, and we're going to see that the Judges stage, the action during this period centers around individuals or groups of individuals. We see that there were 12 military reforms here that took place. As I look at a map in front of me, I see the exact same map that I have that Jesus walked. Only the names on it, for the majority of them, are different names, because the names in the land changed. After they took a battle and they went up and they took the Philistines, the name of the land changed. They changed the name of the land. They didn't call it Philistia anymore. It wasn't the land of Philistines anymore. They took it. And then I guess there was a few left, because later on in history there becomes a land again of that. And but here these battles, these 12 took these battles, and they were all around, everywhere, all around. Let's see, there's Bethlehem, and there's Jerusalem here, and there's Jericho, and those are here, right here in the middle of this place. By the way, Bethlehem, Jericho, and the Benjamites here, and Jerusalem's here, and just above the Salt Sea. And all the way around it, they battled in the land. What it was all 12 of the tribes of Israel all had land. It was their land. God gave it to them. Naphtali up here in the top, up by Dan, and up near Damascus, where Damascus would be. Above Mount Tabor, where Jesus went, by the way. Jesus walked up to Mount Tabor. And then over here, to the Sidonians and the Amorites over there. That was Sodom or Sion, let's see. Jesus walked over there to the seashore over there. And he went over there, and from when he left over here by Mount Tabor, he went over that way, walked over there. And and Manasseh, that's a land where Jesus walked, and he came down through Manasseh, down by the river Jabbok, down into what was the land of Gad. When he came into it, it wasn't the land of Gad anymore, and he went there in the desert, and he prayed. He went up there on a mountain, and he prayed, and he walked down through there. He came down to Mount Nebo. He came back over through to Bethlehem, where he was born. He didn't stay there long, because he said where he was, people don't accept you in your own town. They say, that's old Pete. He was a drunk. I remember him. He used to come down here and he'd get drunk every night, and that's the way it is around my town. But I'm a different person now. But you never live down in your own town. People just aren't going to think much of you. And all right, so anyway, here we are looking at the land that I've studied in a whole different map. And I see why I'm able to study it in a different map. Because these guys that went before us and before Jesus cleared the land of those marauders, those people. Cleared the land, pushed them out, pushed them back. Those people who were anti-God, by the way, they were anti-God people. All of these 12 judges were all Jewish people. They were all leaders of the tribes of Israel. They were all leaders of Israel. And therefore they had the right. God had given them this promised land here for a couple hundred, about 225 miles or so, up the Rift Valley right here. There's mountains on both sides, great mountain terrain. And then here's this valley. This valley is even way below sea level. But this valley has its fertility, and the fertility of it comes from the rainfall off from the mountains. The snow melts, and the rain melts, the water comes down. It comes down the Jordan River at a certain time of the year, and it floods the whole plain down there. It floods a big plain, and they can grow great amounts of vegetables and fruit trees and stuff. And so it's amazing what God did for that land over there. So we had these, there was a guy that was a bloody butcher. He was a terrible fellow. And then we had an idol worshiper. And everybody sinned. Everybody sinned. We had a cowardly Levite. But we did have a girl that didn't sin. She was a Moabitess girl. And she came back with Ruth. Her name was Naomi. And Ruth. Ruth came back with Naomi, and she has no sin applied to her. There was a dedicated mother, and there was a unscrupulous priest. You know, just because the priests were priests, they were born priests. In that day, priests were born priests, and because they were born priests, they were expected to be priests. They were expected to be clean and right. They all weren't. Some of them were unscrupulous, some of them were bad, and some of them they frustrated. The Philistines were a frustrated people. And then there was a circuit riding preacher. Here come Elijah. He came along, riding on his horse and with a message from God. And he cursed people. He told people they would be doomed. He blessed people. And he cursed and blessed. He cursed and blessed. He cursed and blessed. And he himself was put in precarious situations by God. He was put in situations where he had to use the faith that God gave him. That is what God wants us to do. He wants us to use the faith that we've got. We get in a precarious situation. I can think of many, many, many situations I've been in through my Christian life where God took that situation, made it to where I could go out and win a soul to the Lord. I could take a tract out of my pocket. I remember having this flat tire, and I've told this story on YouTube before. Had this flat tire. I was going up the interstate. I got off the interstate with the flat. Pulled right in to a place where they could fix it. And they said, we can't fix it. We got everything going on here. There's no way. So they told me where to go. So I'm driving on the flat tire, and I drive around the block to another tire place. And they can't fix it. They said, no, we just can't do it today. But they send me to a third one. I get to the third one. I can't find the man. So I finally find his office, and I step in, and there's a man there with a pistol. He's going to kill himself. And this man was going to kill himself. And I won him to the Lord, talked to him about the Lord. And he changed his mind. God took me through a series to get me where he wanted me, to use me in a place. I thought I had been dastardly destroyed out on the highway with a flat tire. I couldn't afford a flat tire. I was headed to a job I had to be at. I had very important things that day, but I found out none of them were as important as what God had for me to do. So remember to always keep your mind open. Keep yourself open. We're like these judges that were put in place here. We are to fight off the enemy around us. And you say, where is it? Oh, when you walk out the door, you're in enemy territory. Today, when you walk out, you are in enemy territory. With what we've got going on today, all the way from Washington to every border of the United States. Amalek was the bloody butcher. Micah, the mother-spoiled thief and idol worshiper. And this is not the Micah that wrote the book of Micah. And then we had the cowardly judge, was the sick Levite, a sexually perverted man that was in there. And then we had this beautiful picture of this girl, Ruth, who said to her mother-in-law after her husband died, her mother-in-law said, I'm going back to Jerusalem. Ruth was a Moabitess. She was not a Jew. She was a Moabitess. But God had placed in her the need for her to go back with her mother-in-law to Jerusalem. And she did. And God made a way for her to meet Boaz. And this is a picture, by the way, of the world coming back to God. This is a picture of the world coming back to God. If you are, say you just got saved, that's the reason you punched onto one of these excerpts, and you're wanting to learn, you're going to have to see, you've got to renounce the world. When you renounce the world, like Ruth did. And then Ruth requested of her mother-in-law that she could go with her. She was gung-ho wanting to go, and she did. And then we see Ruth reaping a little bit later of the good grain. And then we see Ruth rejoicing as Boaz takes her to wed, and she becomes like a queen in that land. Boaz was a very, very wealthy man in that land, had much land, had much everything. He was the champion guy of the time. And Ruth ends up marrying him. God makes it that way. If you'll read that whole story of Ruth, you'll love it. You'll love it, how it came about and how she ended up being married to the man God wanted her to be married to. That's a picture of God retrieving us as human beings out of the world system and putting us in His graces. And that's what that is. If you've never asked Jesus to forgive you of your sin, do it today. Say, God, I am a sinner. Forgive me of my sin. Come in my heart. Save my soul. I may go to heaven. Be with you forever. I do pray in Jesus' name. Amen. That's what you need to do. Our time is about come and gone. We will see you next time. This is Brother Peter with tidbits from the Word. May God bless you today. Meet the need in your life. Be sure and stay close to Him. And if you'll stay close to him, he will draw close to you. And when he draws close to you, you're in a protected area, boat and abode. So see you next time. Bye-bye.